I wasn't expecting my ego to get wrecked by a girl in a faded cafe apron, balancing a cardboard tray of coffee cups like it was a weapon. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. Inside the lobby of the glass fortress that bore my name, Hayes Design Group. She walked in briskly, eyes on her phone, lips moving as she whispered something like an order number. Then she tripped. Coffee went flying. And for the first time in a long time, I froze. Not because of the mess, but because I'd never seen someone look that genuinely horrified over staining a $5,000 suit. Great, I muttered, staring down at the spreading brown patch on my jacket. That's the look I was missing, caramel macchiato couture, she gasped, scrambling for napkins from her apron. I'm so sorry. Someone ordered these for Mr. Hayes' meeting and I didn't. I am Mr. Hayes, I cut in, brushing off a drop that landed on my watch. She froze, eyes widening. Oh, there it was. That flicker of panic people get when they realize they've just ruined something belonging to someone with power. Usually I enjoyed that moment. This time I didn't. Relax, I said, trying not to laugh. It's coffee, not acid. She looked up at me then. Really looked, and for a second it was like she didn't care who I was. You shouldn't make people feel bad for trying to do their job, she said, soft but sharp. You can afford dry cleaning. Some people can't afford another shift. I blinked. Did you just scold me? She was already wiping the floor. You're blocking the spill. I stepped aside, hands in my pockets, half amused, half offended. Most people apologize to me twice before breathing near my office door. This one? She just publicly put me in my place over a cup of spilled coffee. I liked it. Against every arrogant bone in my body, I liked it. Name? I asked, watching her stack the empty tray. Lena. Last name? Doesn't matter, she said quickly. I'm not applying for a job. I'm just dropping off orders for brew space on 7th. Not applying yet, I said. She frowned. Excuse me? People usually end up working for me after they spill something on me. It's how I find loyalty under pressure. That's the dumbest hiring policy I've ever heard, she said, standing upright. I grinned. That's because it's not real. But your reaction was worth it. She shook her head, muttering something about arrogant architects, and walked out with the kind of unbothered confidence you can't buy. I watched her cross the street, hair catching the sunlight, and for some reason I didn't go upstairs because something about her felt like unfinished business. By noon, I found out she wasn't just a barista. She was running the deliveries for a struggling independent cafe 2 blocks from our office. She'd been covering for a sick co-worker, delivering catering orders to the firms we'd been wooing as clients. Coffee girl's fearless, said Megan, my assistant, reading a note left with the order. Sorry for the spill. Hope your meeting's successful. Lena, I smirked. Fearless or insubordinate? Hard to tell. You smiled, which means interested, Megan said dryly. I didn't answer, because she was right. 2 days later, fate, or more accurately, caffeine, struck again. I was meeting a client at Brewspace, the same cafe. Lena was behind the counter. The moment she saw me, her expression flattened. Please tell me you're not here for coffee. Trying to support local business, I said, pretending to examine the pastry case. You're welcome. You're also standing in front of the register. I leaned against the counter. So hostile. Is that standard Brewspace hospitality? She crossed her arms. Depends who walks in. You remember my order? Black coffee, no sugar? No charm. That one made me laugh, loudly, heads turned. She didn't flinch. When my order came up, she slid it across the counter like a challenge. Try not to spill it this time. You do realize you spilled it on me, right? Selective memory helps the ego, she said. I couldn't resist. Selective kindness helps the heart. That cracked her facade, barely, but I saw it. The twitch of her mouth. The almost smile she tried to hide. Then her manager called her name. And she spun away like the conversation hadn't happened, and that should have been the end. But as luck would have it, or maybe poetic punishment, the client I'd met there, a tech startup CEO, wanted to collaborate on an eco-friendly co-working project. And the best local partner for design input? Brewspace, meaning Lena, meaning we were suddenly in business together. The first planning meeting was held at my firm. She arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for the client, and intentionally not one for me. Missed my name on the cup, I said, gesturing. She didn't look up from her notes. You don't need caffeine. You run on ego. The client coughed, trying not to laugh. The meeting went fine, until the end, when the client suggested joint site visits. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., he said. Both of you, Lena started to protest. Actually, he smiled. It's a big opportunity for brew space, Lena. We'll need your design input, too. And that's how I knew the universe had a wicked sense of humor. I leaned over as the client left. Guess we're partners now, she groaned. This can't be real. Oh, it's very real, I said. 10 a.m. sharp. Wear something stain-resistant. The next day she showed up early. Sunlight poured through the construction site windows, hitting her like a spotlight. No apron, no uniform, just jeans and a white shirt. Sleeves rolled up. Simple, grounded, exactly opposite of everything I surrounded myself with. You're late, she said, checking her phone. I'm the boss. I arrive when the moment's right. You're 30 minutes late. Still my moment. She rolled her eyes. We're supposed to evaluate layout for natural light angles. Right, you're the coffee expert. I'm the architecture expert, she crossed her arms. Natural light matters to people who spend their lives behind counters and laptops. That hit me harder than it should have. You talk like you've lived in both worlds. I have. And just like that, she went quiet. That's when I realized there was more to her than the quick comebacks and rolled eyes. There was tiredness there, a kind that doesn't come from work, but from fighting to stay kind in a world that doesn't always reward it. For a moment we stood there in sunlight and dust, and something inside me shifted, like an architect realizing his favorite design was built on the wrong foundation. Then my phone buzzed, client canceling next week's meeting. I sighed. Well, looks like we have time to go over the model plans. She hesitated. I have another job this afternoon. Cancel it, I said, half joking. She blinked. You can't just tell people to cancel their lives, I smiled. Maybe not, but I just canceled 3 client meetings to be here. She frowned. Why? I didn't have an answer I could say out loud. Because I wanted to see her work. Because she made silence interesting. Because for the first time in years, I cared more about something other than myself, but I only said, because apparently I like my coffee delivered with an argument. She stared at me, caught between exasperation and disbelief. Then for the first time she laughed, really laughed, and just as I thought maybe, just maybe, the tension had turned into something else. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed instantly, from amusement to panic. I have to go, she said, grabbing her bag. Everything okay? She didn't answer. Just muttered, not really, and ran out into the daylight. Leaving me there, half drenched in sunlight, half drenched in confusion, watching the first girl who ever made me, cancel my own plans disappear around the corner, and that's when I knew this wasn't about coffee anymore. It was about what happens when someone walks into your perfect design and rearranges everything. If I'm being honest, I told myself I was only checking on the project. That's how I justified showing up at Brewspace every morning that week, pretending I needed updates on the co-working design. Truth was, I was waiting for Lena. She didn't come in until Thursday. The moment she walked in, hair tied up, dark circles under her eyes, I felt that annoying, inexplicable jolt again, the kind that makes you forget what sentence you were about to say. She saw me, froze for half a second, then sighed like someone who'd just stepped in gum. You again? Client relations, I said, holding up my tablet. I need your input on the floor plan revisions. It's a coffee shop, not a consultation booth. You're a partner in the project, I said. Which means your input matters. She looked at me suspiciously. And you couldn't email? I like in-person meetings, I said. Less risk of being left on red. Her lips twitched like she was fighting a smile. Persistent, aren't you? I'm an architect, I said. Persistence builds empires. She shook her head, pouring a fresh pot. Or ruins them. I finally convinced her to come by the construction site later that afternoon. It's daylight, I said. You'll see how the light moves through the space. I already told you, she said. I don't have time for this. So what are you rushing to exactly? She hesitated. My mom's health clinic. I help with the accounts when I'm not working here. That stopped me. So 2 jobs? Technically 3, she said. But only one pays properly. I didn't know what to say to that. I, a man who'd spent more money on my last rooftop party than most people made in a year, suddenly didn't feel so rich. So I said the only thing that came to mind. Then let me at least drive you. Absolutely not. Why not? Because people like you don't understand what no means until someone throws a latte at your car. I grinned. I do love consistency in our relationship. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue further. Fine. Just don't talk. Impossible request, I said, opening the passenger door for her. The drive was short, but quiet. For once, I didn't fill the air with jokes or charm. The radio hummed softly. The city outside glowed gold under late morning sun. She glanced at me as we stopped at a light. You really don't have anywhere else to be? Plenty of places, I said. None I'd rather be at. That earned me silence. The meaningful kind. At the clinic, I saw the world she lived in. Faded linoleum floors, old computers, the faint smell of sanitizer. It was all sunlight and exhaustion. An older woman behind the desk smiled when she saw Lena. You're late, sweetheart. I brought help, Lena said, gesturing to me like I was a delivery guy. The woman chuckled. You roped a model into volunteering? Architect, I corrected automatically. Same thing if you ask my husband, she said. Come on, the files are in the back. We spent the next hour sorting dusty paperwork and entering data into a prehistoric system that looked allergic to progress. Lena worked quickly, efficiently, and with an unbothered focus that somehow made everything else disappear. At one point, I caught myself just watching her. The way she bit her lip when she concentrated. The way sunlight pooled on her hands, she noticed. You're staring. I'm learning, I said. She scoffed. About what? Priorities, I said. Her expression softened for a second. Then she went back to typing. You think helping one afternoon makes you a saint? No, I said quietly. It just makes me curious what else I've been missing. She didn't reply, but the silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. By the next week, we were practically working side by side on the project. She came by my firm bringing her coffee and her questions. You really designed all this? She asked, walking through the open studio full of glass models and 3D renderings. Every line, I said, except the ones that go crooked. I blame interns for those. Must be nice, she said, to make things perfect. I shrugged. Nothing's perfect. Just looks that way from the outside? Her eyes flicked toward me, curious. That sound personal? Everything does eventually, she smiled faintly. So, Mr. Hayes, what's your perfect world look like? You mean before or after you spilled coffee on me? Answer the question. I leaned on the table. Perfect world? No phones, no deadlines. Just space that breathes, she tilted her head. Space that breathes. You mock me, but that's the goal of every design, I said. Making something that feels alive. She considered that, then said, You know what's funny? You spend your days creating beautiful places for people to live in. But I think you forgot how to live inside one yourself. The words hit harder than any critique I'd ever heard. I didn't say a thing for a moment. Then I muttered, I can't decide if I should hire you or fire you. Neither, she said. You should listen. Over the next few days, something shifted. She started leaving her sarcasm at the door, and I started showing up early, something I hadn't done since college. We began laughing during our meetings, finishing each other's ideas about lighting, color, open space, and I realized how dangerous that was. Because every time she smiled, I canceled another meeting. Every time she leaned over a drawing board, I lost focus on everything else. I was falling, and fast. Then came the slip-up. During a lunch meeting with a major investor, Lena showed up with new concept sketches for the Brewspace collaboration. I introduced her, but the investor, a man in his 60s, made a dismissive comment. So this is the coffee girl? He said, smirking. Cute, Lena froze. I saw the humiliation flash across her face. She's the creative lead, I said quickly, my voice colder than I expected. The man chuckled. Sure, whatever title keeps her around, that did it. I stood up. Meeting's over, he blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. Find another firm if you can't respect mine, or the people in it. The room went silent. The investor stormed out, muttering something about arrogance. Lena looked stunned. You just fired a client. I just kept my integrity, I said. She stared at me for a long moment, eyes softening, lips parting as if to say something, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you," and walked out. For the first time in years, I didn't care about losing a deal. I cared about the way her voice had cracked on that thank you. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to thank me, that it wasn't chivalry. It was self-respect, hers and mine, but she didn't pick up my calls. Didn't come by the next day, or the day after. Megan, my assistant, raised an eyebrow. "You look like a man who lost a blueprint." I lost focus, I admitted. "You mean the coffee girl?" "She's not," I stopped, then sighed. "Yeah, her," Megan nodded. "Then fix it." "How?" "Same way you fix a bad design," she said. "Go back to the foundation." I found Lena that afternoon back at Brewspace, restocking shelves. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I came to apologize," I said. "For what?" "For making your world messier than it needed to be," she sighed, still facing away. "You didn't do that, I did. I let myself get involved in something that was never going to last." I stepped closer. "You mean us?" "There is no us," she said, turning around. "You're the kind of man who moves too fast." "I can't afford to lose my balance," I swallowed hard. "You think I'm just another spoiled architect?" "I think you're scared," she said quietly. "Scared of standing still long enough to feel something real." That stung because it was true. For once, I didn't have a clever comeback. I just looked at her, the one person who'd managed to build something real in the ruins of my ego. Before I could speak, the cafe owner called her from behind the counter. "Lena, the investor rep's on the phone again. He's threatening to pull funding for the co-working deal." Her eyes shot to mine. "That's your client." "I'll handle it," I said, but she shook her head. "No, this time I will." She grabbed the phone and walked toward the office, and I stood there, heart pounding, realizing the unthinkable. The girl who once spilled coffee on my shirt was now cleaning up the mess of my life. I was halfway through canceling yet another client dinner when I realized I hadn't heard her voice all day. That scared me more than any deadline or lawsuit ever could. The studio was quiet, the sunlight cutting across the drafting tables like judgment. Every inch of me missed her. The sarcasm, the soft laughter, even the way she rolled her eyes when I called her sunshine. But she was gone. After the coffee incident, she'd stopped coming. No deliveries, no texts, no sarcastic comebacks about my caffeine dependency. I told myself it was for the best. I had deadlines, projects, distractions. Yet every design I drew came out looking like her. Warm edges, soft lines, too much heart in the structure. By Thursday, I cracked. I called the cafe. They said she quit 2 days ago. "Quit?" I repeated, as if the word had no right to exist. "She said she needed a break," the girl on the phone said. "Something about wanting to focus on her art." Her art. I'd seen her sketches once, faint pencil lines on the back of a napkin. Quiet, intimate things that made even my steel and glass world feel human. I should have asked her more about them. Instead, I'd flirted and bragged. Classic me. So, I did what any emotionally confused Playboy would do. I left the office, got into my car, and drove to the cafe anyway. The bell over the door chimed, and I swear the sound hit like nostalgia. But she wasn't there. The air smelled like cinnamon and regret. I stood there long enough for the barista to give me a pitied smile. "Looking for someone?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, the girl who used to deliver coffee. Emma?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, she left this morning. Said she was heading back to her hometown for a bit." Hometown. I remembered her saying something about family in Vermont. Trees, lakes, quiet roads, and the opposite of my life. I thanked the barista, stepped outside, and sat in my car like a man who'd just misplaced his reason for existing. For the first time in years, I didn't want control. I didn't want to win. I just wanted her to look at me like she used to, skeptical, amused, curious, and maybe forgive me for being the idiot who hurt her without even meaning to. So, I did something I'd never done before. I canceled every meeting, every client call, every dinner. I canceled the entire week. My assistant thought I'd lost my mind. She wasn't wrong. The drive to Vermont was long enough for me to argue with myself 100 times. What was I going to say? "Hey, sorry I used your kindness like a mirror and then shattered it. Sorry I fell for you between sarcasm and caffeine shots." The roads narrowed into countryside, sunlight splintering through tall trees. I finally found the sign for her town, One of those places with a single diner and a population you could count without taking off your shoes. I spotted her outside a small art studio near the corner, wearing paint-stained jeans and that familiar look of concentration. She was sketching something on a large easel, her hair catching the light like a quiet dare. I parked, got out, and stood there for a full minute before I spoke. "You missed a spot," I said softly. She turned, startled. The pencil fell from her hand. Her expression shifted from shock to guarded neutrality. "What are you doing here?" "I got tired of canceled coffee orders," I said. "And canceled meetings. So I came to cancel my pride instead." Her lips twitched. "That's new." "I'm trying new things." Silence stretched between us. The kind that used to be comfortable but now felt heavy with everything unsaid. "Liam," she said finally, "you don't have to do this." "Do what?" "This," she gestured between us. "Drive all the way here, say something charming, and pretend it fixes things." Her voice didn't tremble, but her eyes gave her away. Disappointment, hurt, and a trace of hope she was trying to kill. "I'm not here to charm you, Emma," I said quietly. "I'm here because I ruined something before it even started. Because I used to think connection was a distraction. And then I met you, and it became the only thing that made sense." She crossed her arms, skeptical. "You don't even know me. I know you deliver coffee to people who don't deserve your kindness. I know you don't back down from arrogant architects, and I know that when you laugh, it feels like someone opened a window in my chest." Her eyes softened, just a little. "You think words fix everything?" "Maybe not," I said, but I was hoping showing up might count for something. We ended up walking by the lake behind the studio. Sunlight shimmered across the water, and she walked just far enough ahead that I had to keep earning every step. "I'm scared of you," I admitted. She looked back, surprised. "Of me? Of what you make me feel? I've built my whole life around control. Buildings, plans, schedules. You walked in with a paper cup and wrecked all of it." She smiled faintly. "That's a dramatic way to say you caught feelings. Architects love drama. We build cathedrals out of guilt." She laughed then, quiet, real, the sound that had been haunting my mornings. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said. "When I said what I said that day, it was defensive. You saw too much of me and I panicked." "I get it," she said, "but I needed to step back. You made me feel like an interruption." I winced. "I made you feel like everything except the thing you were." "And what was that?" "The reason I stopped running." She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You're infuriating." "I know. Too confident for your own good. Still accurate. And you're probably late for a meeting somewhere." "I canceled it." "All of them?" "Every single one. Just to watch you work." Her lips parted slightly, surprise flickering into something softer. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." The air between us shifted. It wasn't charged like before. It was quiet, still, like something had finally landed after a long fall. She looked back toward the lake. "You know, the world doesn't revolve around you, Liam." "I'm aware," I said. "That's why I drove to yours." Her laugh broke through the tension again, and this time she didn't stop me when I stepped closer. "Can I see what you were drawing?" I asked. She hesitated, then handed me the sketch pad. It was me, sitting at a drafting table, coffee cup in hand, sunlight slanting through a window. The detail was absurd, even the crease in my shirt was perfect. But there was something else. Warmth in my eyes I didn't remember having. "You made me look..." "Kind," I said quietly. "You can be," she said. "You just forget." I looked up from the sketch and met her gaze. "Then maybe you could remind me once in a while." She studied me, that sharp, analytical stare she had, and after a long pause, she nodded. "Maybe." Later that evening, as we sat on the wooden steps by the studio, she leaned her head against my shoulder. The sun dipped low, but still golden enough to paint everything in second chances. I exhaled, finally feeling something close to peace. "You know," I said, "I wasn't expecting my ego to get wrecked by a girl in an apron holding a cup of burnt coffee." She laughed, the same way she had that first day. "It wasn't burnt. You were just dramatic. Still am. And still arrogant. Working on it." She nudged me lightly. "You canceled every meeting?" "Every single one," I said. "Turns out watching you work is the only thing I can't schedule around." She smiled, and I caught it. That unguarded warmth that made the entire world feel like daylight. For once, the architect had built nothing. No plans, no walls, just a promise he intended to keep, and maybe that was enough. If stories like this make your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Romance Chronicles, where every Playboy finds his heart, and every love story finds its voice.